The story begins with a lone traveler, perhaps a weary merchant, a fugitive, or a scholar seeking forgotten lore, standing at the edge of the Blackmere forest. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, but beneath it lingers something unnatural, like the metallic hint of old blood or the faint rot of something long dead. The trees loom taller than they should, their branches twisted as if frozen in mid-scream, their bark blackened not by fire but by something far older and more sinister. The protagonist hesitates, sensing the wrongness of the place. Maybe they've heard the rumors, the whispered warnings from villagers miles back, the tales of hunters who entered Blackmere and never returned, or the mad ramblings of the occasional survivor who spoke of voices in the wind. But necessity, or foolishness, drives them forward. Perhaps they're desperate, chasing a lost loved one, or maybe they're drawn by something deeper, an inexplicable pull, as if the forest itself has been waiting for them. As they step beneath the canopy, the light dims unnaturally fast, as though the trees are swallowing the sun. The usual sounds of a forest, birds, rustling creatures, the wind, are absent. Instead, there's only silence, heavy and watchful. Then, just as the protagonist considers turning back, they hear it. The faintest whisper, so soft it could be imagination. But it isn't. The voice, if it can even be called that, isn't human. It's a sound like roots shifting beneath the earth, like the creak of old wood, forming something almost like words. It doesn't speak to them directly, not yet. It's testing, probing, seeing if they'll notice. And then, just as suddenly as it came, it's gone. But the forest has taken notice. And now, there's no turning back. The deeper the traveler moves into Blackmere, the heavier the air becomes, thick with the scent of damp moss and something older, something rotten seeping up from the earth. The trees press closer here, their gnarled roots rising from the soil like the fingers of buried corpses grasping for the surface. The silence is no longer just absence, it is a held breath, a waiting tension. Then it begins. At first, it is nothing more than a rustle, something that could be mistaken for wind if there were any wind in this stagnant place. But then it takes shape, a murmur just at the edge of hearing, not one voice but many, layered over one another in a tangled chorus. Some sound human, fragments of speech, half-formed words, a plea or a warning choked off before it can be understood. Others are not human at all. A wet, clicking noise like insects moving in the dark, a low hum like the vibration of roots deep beneath the earth, a sound like bark splitting open to whisper. The traveler stops, listens. The voices do the same. For a moment, there is only that eerie quiet again, as if the forest has realized it has been heard. Then, softly, a single word slithers out from the shadows. Run. But it is too late for that. The moment the word is spoken, the traveler feels it, the undeniable sense of being watched, not just by hidden eyes, but by the trees themselves, by the darkness between them, by the very air. The whispers swell again, this time more insistent, more hungry. They do not speak in sentences, but in fragments, glimpses of thoughts that do not belong to any living mind. She is watching. The roots remember. You should not have come. Join us. The traveler staggers, clutching their head as the voices press in, not just around them, but inside them, as if the words are being carved into their thoughts. And then, just as suddenly as they came, the whispers fade, not gone, but retreating, as if satisfied with this first taste of fear. The forest has spoken, and it will speak again. The traveler stumbles upon it without warning, a cluster of crumbling cottages swallowed by ivy and shadow, their roofs sagging like the backs of broken beasts. This was once a village, perhaps a thriving one, but now it stands frozen in decay. The air here is different, thicker, heavier, as if the past lingers like a sickness in the wood. Doorways gape open, their hinges rusted into silence. Inside, tables are set with plates still holding the remnants of meals, now blackened with mold. Chairs lie toppled, as if the people who once sat in them had lapped up in terror. A child's doll, its stitching frayed and its face worn blank, rests in the mud near the well. The well itself is dry, its bucket rotted through, but when the traveler peers down into the darkness, something far below glints, like eyes or teeth, or the wet reflection of something moving just out of sight. The silence here is worse than in the rest of the forest. It is not the quiet of emptiness, but of something holding very, very still. Then the wind shifts, or what passes for wind in this dead place, and the traveler hears it. A low, shuddering groan, like wood straining under an unbearable weight. It comes from the largest building at the village's center, its door slightly ajar. Inside, the shadows are wrong. They do not move with the light, but twitch on their own, as if alive. Against every instinct, the traveler steps inside. The floorboards whimper underfoot. The walls are covered in markings, not words, but symbols carved deep into the wood, again and again, as if in desperation. Some look like eyes, some look like mouths, some look like trees with too many branches, or roots that curl around things that should not be named. At the far end of the room, a single chair sits upright, facing the door. On it rests a journal, its pages brittle with age. The last entry is smeared with something dark and flaking, but the words are still legible. They came from the trees. They looked like us at first. Then they didn't. We tried to run. The well, the well, the well. The rest of the page is torn away. Outside, something scrapes against the wall of the house, something that sounds like bark on stone. The traveler's breath comes fast and shallow as they step back into the dying light of the village clearing. The journal's final words burn in their mind. They looked like us. Then they didn't. The air has grown colder, though the canopy above remains still. No wind, no birds. Only the slow, sickening certainty that they are not alone. At first, it's just movement, a flicker at the edge of vision, gone the moment the traveler turns their head. Then shapes begin to emerge from the spaces between trees, tall, too tall, their limbs stretched and warped like branches bent under centuries of unnatural growth. They stand in perfect stillness, their forms blurred, as if the darkness itself has pooled into something almost human. Almost. The traveler freezes. The figures do not move. But when they blink, when their eyelids close for just a fraction of a second, the shadows have crept closer. No footsteps, no rustling leaves, just the silent, stuttering advance of things that do not obey the laws of flesh and bone. Their faces, if they can be called faces, are smooth and hollow, featureless save for the occasional split in the darkness where a mouth might be. Or perhaps it's just a crack, a wound. One of them tilts its head. The traveler's pulse hammers in their throat. They remember the journal's warning. They looked like us, and suddenly understand. These things wear the shapes of those who came before, but they are wrong, stretched and hollowed out like skins left too long in the sun. A sound then, soft and wet, like roots pushing through damp soil. The nearest figure lifts an arm, too long, too many joints, and points toward the heart of the forest. Its finger uncurls slowly, beckoning. The traveler stumbles back and the shadows twitch, their stillness shattered by the movement. The air fills with a sound like dry leaves scraping against glass, and then they are everywhere. Between the trees, behind the crumbling houses. Leaning from windows the traveler could have sworn were empty a moment before. Their mouths open in unison, not to speak, but to inhale, as if tasting the fear that rolls off the traveler in waves, and then, as suddenly as they appeared, they are gone. But the forest feels different now, watched, hungry. The deeper the traveler pushes into Blackmere, the more the forest seems to breathe around them, a slow, rhythmic pulse in the roots beneath their feet, in the branches that twist just a little too close as they pass. And then, without warning, the trees part to reveal it, a clearing that should not exist. At its center stands a shrine, or what remains of one. Time has gnawed at its edges, leaving the stone pitted and stained, the carvings on its surface worn smooth in some places, grotesquely detailed in others. Vines choke the structure, but they do not hide the dark streaks that run down its sides like old tears. The traveler knows, without touching, that it is not rust or rain that has discolored the stone. The air here is thick with the scent of copper and damp earth. Approaching feels like a violation. The ground is unnaturally soft, giving slightly underfoot, as if something lies buried just beneath the surface. At the base of the shrine, offerings are piled in a haphazard mound, animal bones yellowed with age, a tarnished locket with its chain snapped, a child's shoe caked in mud, and among them, fresher than the rest, a handful of teeth. Human. The shrine itself is carved with symbols that make the traveler's eyes ache to look at, not from any flaw in the craftsmanship, but because the shapes seem to shift when stared at too long, rearranging themselves into something almost legible before dissolving again. At its peak, a hollowed-out niche cradles a figure, though whether it is made of wood or bone is impossible to tell. Its face is a smooth oval, featureless save for a single vertical gash where a mouth should be. And then the whispers return, not from the trees this time, but from the shrine itself. A wet, clicking murmur that seems to rise from the earth. The traveler staggers back, but the sound follows, curling around their ankles, slipping into their ears. She remembers you, the shrine sighs. A drop of something dark and viscous falls from the figure's mouth slit. The traveler does not wait to see what happens next. The traveler had thought themselves alone in Blackmere, truly alone, until the man stumbled out of the undergrowth. He was gaunt, his clothes hanging in tatters, his skin stretched too tight over bones that seemed to shift beneath it. At first, he appeared human. At first, he even spoke like one, a hoarse, desperate voice cracking with relief at the sight of another living soul. He called himself Elias. He claimed to have been lost in the forest for days. He begged for help, and then his head snapped to the side, too fast, with a sound like wet twigs breaking, and his smile widened, too wide. "You shouldn't be here," he said, but the voice wasn't his anymore. It dripped with something older, something that crawled up from the earth and into his throat. "But now that you are, she wants to meet you." His fingers twitched, nails blackened and curling like dead leaves. When he moved, it wasn't with the hesitance of a starving man, but with the certainty of a predator who'd already won. The traveler recoiled, but Elias was faster. He lunged not to attack, but to grasp, his hands clamping around their wrists with a strength that shouldn't have been possible. "She's in the roots," he whispered, his breath reeking of loam and decay. "She's in the bark. She's in the blood. Can't you hear her singing?" His eyes rolled back, the whites veined with black, and for a moment, the traveler saw it. Something moving beneath his skin, something that wasn't muscle or sinew, but thick, coiled tendrils, squirming like worms in a corpse. Then Elias convulsed. A wet, tearing sound, a scream that started human and ended as something else entirely, a high, keening wail that came from everywhere at once. His body collapsed, but the thing inside him didn't. It unfolded, a tangle of root and rot and teeth, scrabbling at the air before dissolving into the earth like ink in water. The forest sighed. Somewhere deep in the black heart of Blackmere, something laughed. The deeper the traveler ventures into Blackmere, the louder the voices become, no longer just faint murmurs in the wind, but clear, insistent words that coil around their thoughts like vines. The forest is speaking to them now, really speaking. At first, the voices are fragmented, a cacophony of desperate pleas, mad laughter, and warnings that dissolve into static. But then, beneath the chaos, a pattern emerges. The same phrases, repeated in different tones, by different voices, as if the trees themselves are trying to tell a story they can't quite remember. She was wronged, hisses a voice like rustling leaves. The roots remember the fire, murmurs another, soft as a grave. They called her witch, spits a third, sharp as a splinter. The traveler stumbles, clutching their head as the voices swell, merging into a single terrible truth. Long ago, a woman, not a witch, but a healer, a keeper of the old ways, was betrayed by the village that now lies in ruins. They feared her power, her connection to the forest. So they dragged her to the heart of Blackmere, bound her to the oldest tree, and set her aflame. But the forest loved her, and the forest remembered. As she burned, her screams did not fade into the air. They sank into the earth, into the roots, into the very soul of Blackmere. The trees drank her pain, her rage, her sorrow. And when the last ember died, the forest awoke. Now, the whispers are her voice, the shadows are her hands, the shrine is her altar, and the traveler is her offering. Join us, the voices plead, suddenly tender. Let the roots hold you. Let the bark become your skin. You will never be alone again. The traveler wrenches away, but the words follow, slithering into their ears, their lungs, their blood. Because in Blackmere, the truth is not just spoken, it is consumed. The air grows thick with the scent of damp earth and iron as the traveler finally reaches the center of the forest. The trees here are twisted into impossible shapes, their trunks fused together like the ribs of some great buried beast. The ground slopes downward, forming a hollow where the shadows cling too densely, refusing to be dispelled by the weak light that filters through the canopy. And there, in the center of it all, stands the heart tree. It is ancient, older than the village, older than the whispers, older than time itself. Its bark is blackened, not from fire, but from something deeper, something that seeps from within. The trunk splits open in jagged fissures, revealing glimpses of what lies beneath. Not wood, but something dark and pulsing, like muscle, like a heart still beating. The traveler steps closer, drawn against their will. The roots shift beneath their feet, not dead, but dormant, coiled and waiting. The air hums with a sound like a voice just below hearing, a murmur that vibrates in the bones. Then, the tree opens. A crack widens in the trunk, peeling apart like a wound. From the darkness within, something glistens, wet, alive. A hand presses against the inner bark, fingers splayed. Then another, then a face pressing forward, straining to break free. The traveler recognizes them. The guide who disappeared. The villagers from the ruins. Countless others, their features stretched and distorted, their mouths moving in silent screams. They are trapped within the tree, fused with its flesh, their bodies half consumed by the pulsing darkness. And at the center, a figure wreathed in roots, a woman with hollow eyes and skin like bark, her lips parted in a smile too wide for a human mouth. "You came," she whispers, though her voice comes from everywhere at once, from the trees, from the earth, from the traveler's own mind. They all come in the end. The roots surge forward. The traveler tries to run, but the ground itself resists, the soil clutching at their feet like hands. The last thing they see before the darkness takes them is the heart tree's maw, widening, hungry, eager. And then silence. For a moment, the forest is still. Then, from the depths of the earth, a new whisper rises. The traveler stands frozen before the heart tree, its pulsing maw stretched wide like a waiting throat. The roots coil around their ankles, not yet tightening, testing, teasing, giving them one last moment to choose. The air thrums with anticipation. The forest holds its breath, and then the voices come, not from the trees, but from within. "Run!" whispers the traveler's own mind, their survival instinct sharp as a blade. "Fight!" snarls their fury, fists clenching at the sight of the witch's hollow eyes. "Stay!" sighs something deeper, something older. A voice that isn't theirs at all, but the forest's, seeping into their bones like rain into parched earth. The traveler's hand drifts to the knife at their belt. A foolish thought. What good is steel against a thing that has swallowed whole villages? But the weight of it is familiar, an anchor in the storm. The witch tilts her head. "Poor, stubborn thing," she croons. "You could be more than flesh here. You could be endless." The roots tighten. The choice is now. The forest is quiet now. Not the heavy waiting silence of before, but something softer, uneasy, like the pause between a breath held and a breath released. If you chose the knife's edge, the heart tree stands wounded but unbroken, its black sap crusted over like a scab. The traveler is gone, swallowed by the roots, but the blade remains, buried deep in the bark. A flaw in the forest's design, a crack in its armor. Somewhere, far beyond Blackmere, a hunter sharpens a knife, with a blade missing its tip. If you chose the hollow victory, the clearing is empty. No traveler, no whispers, just the heart tree, its fissures sealed tight. But come twilight, if you press your ear to the bark, you'll hear it. A new voice among the chorus, still screaming, still fighting. In the village, a child picks up a doll they've never seen before. Its stitching is fresh. Its face is familiar. If you chose the third option, the earth is soft where the traveler dug. The roots lie limp, their grip slackened. The heart tree is still alive, but it is sleeping, and in its dreams, it whimpers. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next one. Bye for now.